Hi everybody, in this question we are going to start talking about cost volume profit analysis, CVP. So what we are going to ask the simple question of what is the break even that I need to catch to make sure that I'm covering all my fixed costs. And what we are given in this problem is sales price per unit, variable cost per unit, and the fixed cost and the total of those fixed costs. And I'm trying to calculate break even in terms of units. Now, there are a lot of formulas out there, but what I'm going to do is not to go over formulas, but make sure that you understand the logic behind it. So, profit, as we know, is equal to revenue minus cost. At break even, profit is equal to 0. Now, I can write the profit again, revenue minus cost. I can break down the cost and say cost is variable cost plus fixed cost. So profit is revenue minus the variable cost minus the fixed cost. I can rewrite revenue by saying my revenue is going to be equal to price, this guy here, multiplied by the quantity. My variable cost is unit variable cost, this one here, multiplied by the quantity, and I have my fixed cost here. Then what I do is I look at the quantity portion and I can factor that out. I can say profit is equal to quantity multiplied by price minus variable cost. It's the same as this piece right here. Minus the fixed cost is going to give me the profit. Now at break even, profit was 0. Let's rewrite the equation. Profit is 0. P times Q is the revenue. Minus Q times V is the variable cost minus the fixed cost. Now 0 is equal to Q times P minus V minus fixed. P minus V is also known as contribution margin. Please look the absorption costing versus variable costing question 6 to make sure that you understand that portion. So it is unit contribution margin is whatever you are making for each unit constituting all the variable cost. Now let's come back to the equation and let's rewrite the equation and say the fixed cost is actually nothing but Q times P minus V. If I solve for Q, it is going to be my fixed cost divided by P minus V. This is a long way of saying this formula right here, but I want you to understand again the logic behind this formula. The break-even point quantity is the fixed cost divided by unit contribution margin P minus V. The quantity then is the fixed cost, the total fixed cost, 800,000, divided by 3,000 P minus 2,500 V. So 800,000 divided by 500 is going to give us 1,600 units for break-even points. Now, let's take a look at another example where we are going to say the break-even point in terms of units. And before we do that, we are going to calculate something called contribution margin ratio. Contribution margin ratio is nothing but the contribution margin, P minus V, divided by revenue per unit, it's V. So unit contribution margin divided by price is going to give me the contribution margin ratio. In this case, P minus V is 500 divided by P, price, 16.67% is going to give me the contribution margin ratio. And the only two data points I'm using is the sales price per unit and total variable cost per unit. Now let's come back to annual break-even point in terms of dollars. What I need to do is, the simplest way is, I'll take break-even units, multiply it by sales. That is going to give me the break-even dollar figure at this quantity. There are fancy ways that I'm going to go over, but this is really the simplest way. Take the break-even quantity, multiply it by price. That is going to give you the break-even point in terms of dollars. So at $4,800,000 sales, the profit is literally zero. You are literally breaking even, and you can calculate that. Another fancy way to calculate break-even sales, and I would stick to the simple one here, but just in case they are giving you the contribution margin ratio, break-even dollar sales is nothing but fixed cost divided by unit contribution margin ratio, which is 800,000 divided by 16.67% is $4.8 million. But let's wait a minute. Why is that the case, that if you divide the fixed costs by something called contribution margin ratio, we will get the break-even sales dollars that we just calculated right here? What's happening is, our quantity is, just like we calculated, is fixed cost divided by contribution margin. This is, again, at break-even, profit is zero, and if I rearrange and calculate for solve for quantity, this is what I get. Multiply each side by price, and you are going to get the sales revenue. And here is what I'm doing is fixed cost times price divided by price minus variable cost, or fixed cost divided by the contribution margin. This is exactly the same as here. So that's why the sales revenue, 4.8 million, also can be also calculated by just the fixed cost and the unit contribution margin ratio. In the next example, we are going to go over margin of safety for the same problem.